story here about a Korean pop singer who unexpectedly died at the age of 30. Now, this is about the South Korean singer Park Boram, who is pretty much looks like a regular musician. She's a young girl who's in a band, and it says she's built her career over the past decade. And according to her agency, just unexpectedly just dies late at night on April 11th, 2024. And this is interesting to me in particular because I recently turned 30, one, but these kinds of health related issues for musicians, it's always up in the air as far as how we should kind of expect, certain lifestyles for musicians. Now, I don't know pretty much anything about this particular musician, but I do know that this is important to pay attention to because there is a level of standard that you should have for your health as a musician. And it's not so much a cautionary tale about this particular singer, but it's a cautionary tale in not knowing what's going on in your body. And I think that's something that, musician or otherwise, is something that needs to be talked about more. But the article here, this is from Variety, written by Stephen J. Horowitz. Now, the article goes on to say, it gives a little bit about her story. And it says, Baram has had success in her native Korea since first appearing as a contestant in 2010 on Mnet's Superstar K2. Now, 2010, that's when I graduated high school, right? And so that means that summer when she was first appearing as a contestant on this show, I was pretty much doing the same thing, but for college. Like I was auditioning for colleges and playing in bands for colleges, right? And it says she finished in eighth place on the show. But then she put out her debut single titled Beautiful, which hit number two on Korea's Circle Digital chart in 2014. So just 4 years later, she's already charting into her career. That song was a semi autobiographical tune about the pressures to conform to beauty standards. And something like that can easily be something that can propel, like that topic of pressures to conform to a beauty standard could be something that is easily something that you can propel forward, but it's something that is also common when you think about the age that she was when she started performing and things like that. So a lot of this could be just a typical path that you see for musicians, not necessarily for musicians in Korea, but for example, to whittle it down to a more general demographic, this is probably a more formulaic path for a young female musician to talk about the pressures to conform to beauty standards, right? Now, we don't know if that was important to her, but the reason that stands out to me is because you don't really see topics that are propelled in mainstream media that the particular artist would like to talk about. And so we don't really know if the topic of this song was the reason it charted at number two, or maybe there was maybe a growth in skill between 2010 and 2014. But keep in mind that the growth you have as an artist the focus that you have as an artist does play a role in the growth that you have as an artist. So then it continues to say she released her first EP, Sella Pretty, the following year, earning a second top 10 entry on the charts with the title track. Amid a string of one-off singles and collaboration with artists like Eric Nam and Park Young, She put out her second EP, Orange Moon, in 2017, followed with soundtrack songs and standalone tracks. So she was putting in a lot of work between 2014 and 2017. And you can tell it's a lot of work because of the quality you would have to put out to be charting. Like, this isn't just SoundCloud tracks getting put out. This wasn't just, random practice cuts or improvisation and things like that. These were heavily produced or at least curated songs, right? And so it continues. She most recently put out a pair of singles, I Hope and I Miss You, earlier this year. Boram was working on an album to coincide with her 10th anniversary as a recording musician this summer. So she would have been 10 years in the game as a recording musician. I guess her debut was 2014, right? And according to a lot of the articles that I were looking up, it seems to just be a sudden and unexpected death that they believe is heart related. And so things like this should be kind of like pinging on your radar as a musician, because we don't necessarily know this particular girl, we don't know her lifestyle, but we do know that there was a level of success for this particular person. And for them to suddenly pass away at 30 is always going to be, abnormal, strange, shocking. And it could be something, normally health rate related, or something maybe, she's been dealing with. But it's always going to be strange to see a 30-year-old, a successful 30-year-old at that, just pass away. So it's interesting. It's a very, 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 very interesting thing. And so I'm looking up other articles here, and I'm trying to see if there's going to be any new information. This information, as you're seeing this recording, came out about like a day ago. And a lot of it is just getting the information out that she had passed. Let's see here. Yeah, there's not much information on any information on how she passed. So we'll just have to keep tabs on it. But rest in peace to her. Condolences to her family. I'm sure all the people she's working with are, shocked. Any artist that just, up and leaves us like that is always crazy. I'll give you one thing that's kind of weird to see. She's born in March 1st, 1994. I was born in 92. It just feels weird to say that, knowing that how she had passed away and things like that. But very, very, very weird, very, very, very strange things. Hopefully we get some kind of closure on this kind of thing. These things are always these things happen, but I've noticed when they happen, we don't necessarily get closure on how it typically is avoided or prevented or predicted, right? And so if we look up sudden death in young people, it says heart problems are to blame. And this is coming from, let's see here, the Mayo Clinic.org. And it says here on the Mayo Clinic, sudden cardiac death rarely happens in those under age 35, but those at risk can take precautions. And this is what I mean as a musician. I would like you to pay attention to this, especially if you're a person who's trying to use musicianship as a way to be successful, understanding the stresses that come with the career, understanding the health risks that come with it, and also find ways to avoid these kinds of pitfalls. But the article continues and it says sudden cardiac death is the swift and not expected ending of all heart activity. Breathing and blood flow stop right away within seconds. The person is not conscious and dies. That's sudden cardiac arrest. Now, again, we're not saying that's what happened with this particular artist, but this is one of the reasons that people under the age of 35 typically just suddenly pass. Sudden cardiac death, as the article says, is different from sudden cardiac arrest. So there's sudden cardiac death and then there's sudden cardiac arrest. SCA, sudden cardiac arrest, is the sudden loss of heart activity due to an irregular heart rhythm. Survival is possible with fast, proper medical care. The story about Park Boram, they said that when they found her and she was suffering from her ailment, they don't know what it was. They were able to get her to the hospital, but she was pronounced dead an hour later. So we may have more information, hopefully, on some clarity about that. But the article continues and says sudden cardiac death in seemingly healthy people under age 35 is rare. It is more common in males than females. Heart conditions that are not diagnosed, such as genetic heart disease, can cause sudden death in teenagers and young adults. So, genetic heart disease, let's look it up just so I can be correct. I believe these are things like diabetes, high blood pressure, things. Okay. Let's see here. Understanding your heart rate. So, we have a bunch of different things. And they have very, very complicated names. So I'm gonna try to find descriptions so we can make them easier to understand. So let's see here. Cardiovascular genetic based diseases. Oh, let's make one more step here. Cardiovascular genetic diseases, inherited diseases. Okay, so they have a list here, and there's actually a lot. Yeah, there's a lot. Okay, so we have cardiomyopathy, in which your heart muscle becomes enlarged, thick, or stiff. That's kind of crazy because remember, your heart is a muscle and it needs to be able to flex to be able to pump all the blood in there. Heart arrhythmia. Arrhythmia, also known as cardiac arrhythmias, heart arrhythmias or dysrhythmias, are irregularities in the heartbeat, including when it is too fast or too slow. And there's a bunch here. There's inherited aortic aneurysms, cardiac tumors, high cholesterol, pulmonary hypertension, cardiac amyloidosis, arrhythmogenic right ventricular cardiomyopathy. That is a crazy name. Arrhythmogenic right ventricular cardiomyopathy. Wow. Yeah, I'm a rapper. And so these things, as the article, we go back to it, it says heart conditions that are not diagnosed, such as genetic heart diseases, can cause sudden death in teenagers and young adults. A heart condition that is not identified may cause a young person to suddenly die during physical activity, such as competitive sports. So it could be literally anything that could make your heart stress and work and things like that. So in her example, she could have been practicing and gotten to a very, very, exciting part of the song or been dancing moves and things like that. So the article continues and says most student athletes compete yearly without heart incident. If you or your child are at risk of sudden cardiac death, talk to your healthcare professional and ask about steps you can take to lower the risk, right? And then it continues to tell you about how more common it is, what can cause it, and which goes over the different diseases we just went over. How can parents, coaches, and others know if a young person is at risk? One of the signs is fainting. Another one is shortness of breath or chest pain, and a family history of cardiac death. So as they learn more about, I guess, her health and things like that, they should get more information on, you know, what actually happened. But something like this being so sudden, it's a weird, and scary thing to think about because I couldn't imagine your trajectory and your music career just going up, up and up and up and up, and then suddenly, boom. It You don't have to be a bad person. You don't have to do anything wrong. You just don't have to be right place, wrong time. None of that is just health. You just you just fell victim to your health. But if this was interesting to you, let me know. Rest in peace to Park Boram, who died at 30 years old, successful K-pop singer, putting in 10 years of work. If this was interesting to you, let me know, and I'll bring you more information like this, which should hopefully give you some clarity on your situation, maybe somebody you know. So make sure you're liking and sharing and seeing whether or not this information could help another young musician, maybe inspire a young girl to get started and take a very close look at her career and make some really big changes. So let's get it. I want to see you guys out here putting in work. Tag me in your practice videos and let me know what you're working on and what new music you're making. And we are out.